Check, yes, okay. Easy, the things that you learn after all these years. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's a Sabbath, and that's how we bless each other back home when we celebrate Shabbat every week. Thank you, Pastor Shane, for the opportunity. I'm glad to be able to develop a whole seminar to a topic which is really loaded and causes a lot of kind of passion and arguments and heated up debates, etc. And I will argue that most of those debates are coming from a standpoint of simple ignorance. And my point in doing what I'm doing is just to give people the tools to understand the story, to try to focus on facts and not on narratives. And as I advised you when we met on Wednesday, do not believe a word that you hear from me. You go and verify. You go and check. There is so much propaganda out there. I don't want to add to that. I don't want anybody to accuse me that I'm just sharing propaganda with you. So please go and check the facts. If you have any questions, we have a few hours together today, and I'm always available on the internet or email, and I'll be more than happy to stay in touch and answer questions. It's quite amazing to me, and I'm just repeating some of the short introduction I gave on Wednesday, what we basically see that is unfolding ever since the war in Gaza started. And when you speak about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's a very narrow aspect of something much bigger than that. We speak about, if I can give it a title, the war of the free world versus radical Islam. And it's a global struggle, not a local one. And it's amazing to see how easy it is today to manipulate people. People just don't know how to find the truth anymore. And if you add to that AI, well, this is bad news to so many people, because what can you trust? And if you are confused, or I'm confused, that's not a problem, but world leaders have the same amount of information, and these are the sources they are drinking from, so to speak. And when the country's leader is trying to design the policy based on fake and based on narratives, we are in trouble. And therefore, the least we need to do is to do some cleanup. We need to go to the sources. We need to try to build up a story. And again, once you know the facts, you use them any way you want. But as intelligent human beings, at least we need to find out the facts and then to try to build our own story. The combination of zeal and ignorance is a devastating one. You see those fine American kids from the Ivy League universities and bright European students marching the streets, waving those banners, screaming, shouting, until you ask them a simple question, they don't have a clue what is it that they're standing for. And that's, for me, that's offensive. Intelligent people should be bright enough to go and do the study. And then once you know, come from the perspective of knowledge and start debating. And I don't mind to debate with anybody. I cannot debate with ignorance. Right? I will not debate a doctor about issues I know nothing about. So you hear some frustration in my voice, and the thing is very personal and very emotional, especially to us Israelis. But again, I try to convince people for years now, it's not a local Middle Eastern problem. It's a global one, and if the world needed a wake-up call, then you had 9/11, exactly 25 or 24 years ago, and it's everywhere. And the more we know, I think, we'll be better equipped, at least, to make a judgment, to make an opinion based not on narratives and fake facts, but about the facts. We started on Wednesday, and I tried to introduce to you the land of Palestine as it was under the Ottoman Empire. We spoke about the fact that the Ottoman/Turkey had a change over the 19th century. Turkey was a weak power. It needed a lot of support. The European power supported Turkey. Turkey was in so much of debt they could not pay back the money. They offered land in Palestine, and that brought the modern era to Palestine. Christians were invited into Palestine to purchase land, make investments, and so were the Jews. So for nearly 1800 years, Palestine was out of reach for the Jewish people. People lived there, but people did not live there a national way of life. They lived there waiting for God, right, to fulfill His promises. The Bible is full of them about the regathering of the nation. The 19th century was the opportunity. The Ottomans are willing to sell land to Jews included. And one vision of one person called Theodor Herzl was the one that made of it a national movement. It's no longer Mr. Jacobs or Mr. Cohen want to buy a piece of land. It's the nation as a nation, under a new name, the Zionist organization, is interested to recruit all the resources, to build the national institutions, to buy land in Palestine, not to steal and not to rob and not to dispossess land that nobody wanted. We speak about the wasteland, the swamps and the marshes. And then the nation got together, not everybody, even today. Not all the Jews in the world are Zionists. But most of us are. So now there is a national plan to bring the Jewish people back to the country with the consent of the Ottoman Empire and their encouragement, because Jewish money brought life to a country that was uninhabited, and the locals that lived there lived a very poor way of life. And my point was, amongst all of this long introduction, is who are the indigenous people of the land? Who are the people that the brutal Jews came to steal the land from? Because that's the narrative. There were people that lived peacefully all over the country, and suddenly a colonialist force, the Jewish people, came to steal the land, to rob the land. The Jews are not connected to Israel. Can anybody seriously make that argument that the Jewish people are not connected to the land of Israel? You know your Bibles, read your Bible. It's all about the Jewish nation connected to the land of Israel. We are the only religion that has a geographical component in our existence as a nation. You can be Christian all around the world, but to live as a Jew, to fulfill all the commandments, it must be in one land, the land of Israel. If you want to fulfill the commandments of the land, about 70 commandments speak about sabbatical year, how to sow and how to reap and how to harvest. You can only do that on one land, the land of Israel. So this argument, which is so pathetic, Jews are not connected. Just a bunch of foreigners that came. Why go to Palestine, for goodness sake? If you go to Greece, much nicer to go to Spain. So the Jewish people are on the way back to the country as a national project which brought us to the First World War. I do want to start with the First World War. And during the day, I'm going to bring up some old videos as well, not best quality. I have to apologize in advance. It will speak Hebrew sometimes, and I'll speak over it to try to explain what is it that you see. I thought it will add a little more flavor, a little more color to what we are talking about. WW1, that will be the situation and the allies and the people that fought against each other. You do see the Central Powers, which were made out of Germany basically, but Austro-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Palestine is in the Ottoman Empire. And then you have the allies that started with Britain and France, and the US joined in 1917. And as the war was developing, Great Britain understood that they do not have a big enough of an army to confront the Germans on French soil and the Ottomans were the weakest link. They needed some allies from the Middle East to try to help them to break through the lines of the Ottomans and take the Ottomans out of the Central Powers to increase the pressure on Germany. Global politics not that important. And to try to find some local allies, the governor of Egypt, a British person by the name of McMahon, made contact with the Sharif of Mecca. The name Sharif is a title given to the Muslim ruler that has in his territory the two holy places, Mecca and Medina. If you are a ruler of these areas, your title is Sharif. And he was believed to be the leader of all the Muslims. A sidetrack for just a minute, if I may. In the Arab world, if the head of Islam as a religion is not an Arab, his title will be a sultan. And for that reason, the Ottomans were sultans, because the Ottomans, the Turks, are Muslims, but not Arabs. If the head of Islam is an Arab, his title will be a caliph. ISIS wanted to restore the caliphate, Arab Muslim, and not just Muslim. I know it's confusing, but you need to understand that most of the Muslims around the world, people that live by Islam and Sharia law, are not Arabs. Indonesia and Malaysia and Iran and Turkey, these are very big Muslim countries, but they're not Arabs. All right, so I know it sounds like going too deep to explain that, but from their perspective, that's critical to understand. So the British are trying to find an ally, and they negotiate with the Sharif of Mecca, and they come to some agreement. The agreement was that after the war will be over, if you, the Arabs, are going to help us, the British, we're going to give you a kingdom, and that will be the sizes of the kingdom of the Arabs, independent after the Ottomans are going to leave the area. Two exceptions were made. Palestine will stay in British hands. It wasn't conquered yet. It's a future plan, all right? Because Palestine is the Holy Land. And for the British to free Christian holy places after centuries that were in Muslim hands and hand it back to Muslims was too much to bear. So Palestine was the exception. And also the naval base of Aden, they made an agreement. The agreement was signed, it was secret, nobody knew about the agreement. But the Arabs tried, and under the leadership of Lawrence of Arabia, some of you know the name, he was the one to train the Arab forces together, about 2,000. The British were hoping to recruit like 200,000. Only 2,000 people showed up. But they made a promise, they conquered Damascus, and the Arabs know when the war is over, we're going to be free, we're going to have an Arab kingdom. At the same time, Britain and France are negotiating, the two powers, about how to divide the Middle East between the two after the war will be over. It was clear that Turkey will not going to survive, and they wanted to start dividing the world and have a new world order as the war was still going on. So two negotiators, Mark Sykes from the British side and Roger Picot from the French side, are negotiating in behalf of the countries, and after a month of negotiations, that will be the new map of the Middle East. After the war is over, we're going to divide it into two areas of influence. There will be a French one, and there will be a British one. When you look over there, it doesn't tell you the names of the countries. Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. You know why not? Because these countries were not born yet. Syria is a name from the scriptures, but Syria as a country was not born until the aftermath of WW1. There was no Kuwait, and no Saudi Arabia, and no Jordan, and no Lebanon, and no Israel, okay? So they divided the area to two spheres of influence. And then they're going to divide it to countries as well, and we'll see the outcome of that. The funny part was, or the ironical part was, that part of the land that was offered to France was also offered to the Sharif of Mecca. And he knows that this is his territory. France did not have a clue about the promise made to the Arabs. The Arabs had no clue about the promise made to France. You begin to understand chaos after the war will be over, very relevant to our topic. And to make things even worse, or better if you wish, in November 2nd of 1917, the Zionist movement gets a promise from the British. Yes, and you know, my nose is still running with your permission, so I'm still getting a little cold. Thank you. Thank you. So you do see a letter that was sent to the Lord Rothschild that represented the Zionists in Britain, and he said very clearly, His Majesty King George V sees in favor the founding of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. So this is the first document that we have today. By the way, Napoleon Bonaparte, more than a century earlier, made the same promise. But he did that in order to annoy the British back in the days. But he did say, Palestine belongs to the Jews, and if I conquer the place, I'm going to invite all of them to go back to the old homeland. Nobody spoke about Palestinians. There were no people in the land that considered themselves as nation or any kind of a society for that purpose. So you do understand the chaos here. Great Britain made three promises to three different parties, in a way dividing the very same land. And all these were done secretly. It will surface. You can't hide it forever, but at least for a while. Everybody thinks that he's going to get something. Now, when you look at this document, it says Palestine. Well, that's a question even today. What is Palestine? The place never existed as a sovereign area. So there are no clear borders. It was a district in the Ottoman Empire, but nobody knew exactly where do you leave the place or come in because the borders were not marked. And the British document says a homeland in Palestine. Well, how much of Palestine will be allocated for the future Jewish homeland? Doesn't say that. So there was some unclarity what is Palestine and how much of it will be allocated for the Jews. And what's a homeland? Is it an independent state? Is it maybe an autonomy? Well, it wasn't very clear. But the first time that the world officially recognizes, because this document was embraced by the League of Nations a few years to come, is that the Jews deserve a homeland in Palestine. It does say without, right? Without hurting, without damaging, without challenging the local ethnic groups in Palestine. Why did it say without challenging the local Palestinian nation? Because there was no such nation, the word was not even used. So the idea that we speak about an ancient nation that lived peacefully in a place called Palestine, forgive me, that's nonsense, all right? So now we speak about a new world order, so to speak, and that brings us to this one, because the argument is going to be later on, well, okay, since Palestine is not very clear, maybe just the western side of the River Jordan, which is here, it's not very clear. But Balfour said it very clearly when he made a statement, both sides of the Jordan. You see it written there? Which means that for the British mindset, all that was supposed to be the homeland of the Jewish people. But the Jews were not that greedy, if I may say so. We only wanted a smaller part of it. But now you understand the problem, all right? The Ottoman Empire is out, and the victors of the First World War are going to create the Middle East based on what principles? Keep in mind that the locals in the Middle East, since biblical days, people lived in tribes, people lived in clans. The tribe that lives on the next mountain is not my friend, he's my bitter enemy. We share absolutely nothing together, and suddenly we're part of the same nation? We do not understand the concept of nationalities. And therefore the plan was, by the British and the French and the US as well, when the war is over, we are going to give them a piece of land, we are going to create countries in our areas, we're going to introduce a mandate teaching the locals, what a patronizing way to say that, how to live as a nation, how to build institutions, how to become civilized, because right now they're savages. So we're going to teach them how to live a way of life that we think they should live like. Nobody was asking the locals, do you want to be part of a nation? How does it work? The mindset in the Middle East doesn't know nations. We speak about tribes, we speak about clans. You are not a part of something the European mindset will call nation, but also there's this kind of arrogant approach. We'll tell you what's good for you. We are going to create countries for you, and you start functioning as a country and not as a religion and not as an ethnicity. That was the idea. So we speak about a new thing now. Now you tell me what will get people together when they were enemies from times immemorial. Let's say that you're sitting in your hotel room in Cairo, as Mr. Churchill did. He was the colonial secretary. He opened the map of the Middle East. This land was allocated to Britain. You take your roller, you take a pencil, and you're marking lines in the desert on the map, not understanding how it's going to look like on the ground. Countries were born, suddenly. People did not understand the concept. So suddenly there was a line here, and you're going from Syria to Iraq. There was never a line before, so we have to build a border, and now there are foreigners, and we cannot just go and visit as we used to, or how are we going to fight on sources of water and grazing grounds? You don't understand this change in mindset. The Middle East was created by the European victors of the war against the will of the locals, creating nationalities. Now, the mindset for the Arabs was, and this is important, is that Islam is not supposed to be divided to nationalities. If you speak about the Muslim nation, that's an oxymoron. All the Muslims should live under one authority, Ummat al-Islam, that will be the term in Arabic. If you divide us to nations, it's a conspiracy. Let me use the mindset of the locals in the Middle East. It's the Christians coming to fight against the Muslims. It's Christian arrogance. They do not see it like the Allies won the war. Christianity defeated Islam. Do you understand the difference between saying that Britain and France defeated the Ottoman Empire or Christianity defeated Islam? Do you understand the difference? It makes all the difference in the world. Islam is humiliated. Islam wants to restore the greatness of Islam. Islam is not teaching humiliation. So the way that they see what the powers try to accomplish, to build the Middle East like a mirror picture of Europe. There will be nations, there will be countries, they will have parliaments. Parliament? Who heard the word parliament? They're going to vote? What does it mean to vote? Voting for what? You'll have institutions. Why do you need them for? I have my camel, I have my small field, I know how to farm the land. What kind of institution? All these ideas brought by Christians, I say again Christians, were totally strange to the locals. So the Middle East was an entity that was created, or an area, against the will of the locals. And it could not be a democracy, please understand, because if you take few tribes and you glue them together to make a nation, all these tribes know is how to fight against each other. That's what they used to do. The only reason for them to cooperate is if you put a ruler, either a dictator or a king, just fearing the regime, you will be willing to cooperate with all the others. Because if that was a democracy, what do you think will happen? Every group will fight for its own interest. Why don't we have democracies in the Middle East until this very day? That's the problem. The people of Iraq are made of multiple minorities, ethnicities that have nothing in common. If you fear Saddam Hussein, you'll cooperate. Arab democracies is an I'm not being biased here. You show me one Arab democracy. There are none. And by the way, maybe they're right. Who says that democracy is the best system? Well, we do. I have to say, sometimes arrogantly, because we do not understand a different mindset. Democracy is a choice that people need to embrace to understand. And it doesn't fit everybody. Iraq was a place that none of us liked maybe as a dictatorship, but it was a functioning state. Look today what happens. So the idea that we want to bring democracy, this is something the Muslim world does not understand. So in order to teach them, we'll have mandates. The British are going to teach the locals in Iraq what does it mean to be a nationality. The French are going to teach the people in Syria what does a nation mean. And Palestine, in a way, is part of all this hustle and bustle as well. Let's make some progress because the clock is ticking and we don't have all day. Well, part of it, but not all of it. You do see the new map, quite confusing, so try to focus on that for a minute. That's basically what I said so far. There will be the British area here, all right, Mesopotamia will be called Iraq later on. There was no Iraq. Before 1922, there was no such place. No such a country. The world is new, basically. Mesopotamia, a province in the Ottoman Empire. France will get a mandate over Syria and then Lebanon, all right? There was no Syria, not yet, and there's no Lebanon. But in what the Bible speaks about Lebanon, yes, as a district, as an area, not as a nationality, not as a national entity. So now we have a new Middle East, and the whole idea is that all those mandates, it's temporary, not for good. It will take 15, 20, 30 years, we'll teach the locals, we'll go home. Didn't happen, all right, because it wasn't the real intention. Intention was to stay and to conquer and to occupy. That was the mindset of the empires, especially when it comes to Palestine. War was over, a peace conference in Paris, in France, and some of you may know the faces. Woodrow Wilson, this gentleman, Clemenceau, the French one, Lloyd George, this is the Italian one, forgot the name, I'm sorry. Peace conference, and they decide to build a body that will be called the League of Nations, preceding the United Nations. That was President Wilson's vision, to bring wars to an end, the goodwill of people, every nation will have its self-determination. Everybody gets something. It has to lead to peace in the area. How naive this way of thinking was, now we know. But back in the days, it looked like it can bring wars to an end. People will not go to war anymore because every nation will have its small piece of territory, the Jews included. It will have to lead to peace. It led to much more chaos. All right, but that was the idea. Spoke about the mandates, and it starts 30 years of British mandate over Palestine. I have to say, and I'll be careful, but I have to say that part of the, I'm just looking for the right words, not to be too right in everybody's face. The Jewish people lost 6 million people in the Holocaust. We don't know the numbers exactly. Part of the blame is British. Because when things were getting worse in Europe, and Jews were desperate to leave German territory to go to Israel, the British refused to let them in. All right, so part of the blame is indeed on the British Empire. And maybe back then it looked like legit, because who can tell Britain what to do? All right, it was indeed the biggest superpower. But when you zoom out a little bit and you see the real intent and the real motivation, and no country will take Jewish refugees in. Interesting, today no country wants to take Palestinian refugees in. Not even Arab countries. before the Second World War started, the world refused to take in Jewish refugees. So people were trapped in Europe. There was one way to go, home to Israel. The British won't let them in. So the question is, what was the motivation of Britain to have this mandate? I have to show you some of the things, and please work with me. Observation of people about the way that the British Empire used to treat the Jewish people. Once again, excuse me. I was told the sun never shines in Seattle, but we had some good days, nice days. So anyhow, when you read that, it tells you something about the approach of the British Empire vis-a-vis the Jews. For example, this one. Because you come as an honest power that wants to give the locals the right to be a nation, and that's the mandate given to you by the League of Nations, and then you totally betray your cause. And I have to show you this one as well. And we're not complaining, we're not the victims. But Britain did not come in good faith. The British had a reason why they want to have a mandate in the area. Suez Canal, remember we spoke about that on Wednesday. Just read that. You speak about the prime ministers, you speak about the most influential British politicians, and that was their approach. We didn't know back at the time, because the League of Nations was very clear about the mandate. I'll give you 2 minutes to read Article 6. That's the mandate given to Britain by the world, all right, regarding Palestine. It was published, great news for the Jewish people. People started coming because Britain was committed to facilitate as many Jews as possible, not the others. But Britain cleverly, or maybe not cleverly, decided only to monitor the borders of Palestine for people that came by sea and completely leave the land borders open. In fact, there was a document, which I don't have with me, I'm sorry, that gives very clear instructions to the Jordanian, Transjordan, whatever, the police over there. If Arabs want to infiltrate into Palestine, don't stop them. If Jews want to infiltrate into Palestine, no. All right? So you do understand what was the approach to begin with. So we do speak about the mandate. We do speak about a new situation in the area. That was the request of the Zionist organization, the peace conference. We want this land, for us. The world offered all of this. Well, this will be enough. It's in the Charter of the League of Nations. The only legal document that we have in the world until this very day. It may change as we speak because there is a conference in the United Nations and many countries are going to recognize a Palestinian state. But as for now, the only document that the world agrees that Palestine belongs to the Jewish people is this one. Forget about sentiments, forget about rallies, documents, facts is this. It may change. If the United Nations votes for a Palestinian state, that will be the new thing, a two-state solution. As per now, the world officially recognizes that Palestine/Israel is the home of the Jewish people. All right? I don't want to be sarcastic. We don't need this recognition. We know where we belong to. But we do speak about words and opinions, etc., so it's important to know. For example, a report given by the US, all right? A certain committee over there. Please notice it says, invited to return to Palestine, not to conquer, not to go to a foreign land, to return to Palestine after years of exile. So the whole world has a view. What should happen? The question should be, how come they all ignore the local Arabs that live in Palestine? Because of one main reason. The world is made of nationalities. That's what they want to accomplish, of ethnicities. There was no nation called Palestinians. I say it for the 6th time, I say it for the 50th time, because it's important. In fact, until the mid-70s, all right, of this last century, nobody used even the term of Palestine. So they try to implement it, they have all the conferences, they write all the books, etc. Now, since the numbers and the demographics in Palestine are changing, because more Arabs infiltrate the land, the Jews are bringing money with them. The Jews are bringing opportunities, and the British mandate is now building its infrastructure. Roads, and a new harbor, and a pipeline to carry oil for the first time ever from Iraq to the Haifa harbor. They need people. Who are they going to hire? The local Jews? Of God knows. Jews demand high salaries like it is in Europe. So who they're going to invite? Arabs from all around the Middle East. And once you're in the country, you're part of the indigenous people. You're a Palestinian. You lived there for centuries. Nonsense. Demographics completely change as a result of the British presence in this area and building all the infrastructure that they need. And riots started right away. Because the British told the Arabs, and we have the documents, amazing. All right? Yes, we have the mandate. And yes, the world wants the Jews to have a homeland. But if you start waves of violence, we can tell the world, listen, another people here, they have some rights as well. We cannot do that unless you start rioting against the Jews. Rioting means massacres. It means murders. The Jews had to build their own militia just to protect Jewish lives. It was Britain working behind the scenes all the time. Because the tension in Europe is mounting. Another war is around the corner. And who was the ally of the British in the first one? The local Arabs? We cannot upset them. We may need them in the future. So from the very beginning, it wasn't really working. And here the Zionist conference right after that makes a statement how we do see what should happen in Palestine. We want to invite people in. It's not going to be a racist entity. Everybody is invited to be an equal citizen. Read the Proclamation of Independence and then read the Charter of the PLO or the Charter of Hamas, how they will treat non-Muslims. It's important. The British, in order to show the world that, hey, there was another people here, are inviting a man by the name of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, this one, an arch enemy of the Jewish people, obviously, and just to create a counterweight for the Zionist organization, they want to create an organization for the Arabs as well. There is no such institution. The British created for them, so now we're equal. Now two people fight for the land, but this one is not called the Supreme Palestinian Council. The Supreme Muslim, focus on religion. There is no nation called Palestine, as I say it once again. Well, he tried. He tried to gather those tribes together and say, listen, we're national. People did not understand the concept. So now we have the Zionist movement on one side representing the Jews and the Muslim Council. All right, now we have two bodies, and Britain can say, just a minute now, it's not just the Jews, we were mistaken, we didn't see that. There's another people here that also have rights. And here's the proof. They have organizations, institutions. We should treat them equally. No. It was created by the British because of British interests. So this gentleman is going to be a good friend of Adolf Hitler in years to come, living in Berlin, broadcasting on Nazi radio every day. And their purpose was just like the German Nazis, to destroy the Jews. And he's going to be quite effective, unfortunately, and quite active. All right, in years to come. Died in the early 70s in Egypt, never came back to Palestine after the British understood the mistake they did and kicked him out of the country. That will be a little later on. Once again, apologize for all this information. It's all relevant. It's all part of it. Well, once again, we go back to the course of events. There was an official recognition of Palestine, and the British understood that they may have made a problem, and they tried to fix it. As they were writing the first document, it also said that there will be a quota of how many Jews can come in the land. It's not the intent of the League of Nations. But Great Britain, to appease the Arabs, said, just a minute now, it's not free immigration of the Jews. We will decide how many people we are allowing to come in. And since we promised the Sharif of Mecca a kingdom and to his son, and we promised that to France as well, well, let's compensate him and let's create a new country for him, the Hashemite kingdom of Transjordan. I'll say it once again, you see the black line coming from the top over there? All right? Which means that Palestine, that was supposed to be a homeland for the Jewish people, now the British are taking 75% of it just to compensate the son of the Sharif of Mecca that was promised a kingdom, to create the Hashemite kingdom of Transjordan. There was no such entity until the British created it by dividing Palestine into two. By the way, the other son of the same Sharif, Abdullah, was supposed to be the king of Syria. But after France took over, he was kicked out and he went to Baghdad. The British created a country called Iraq, especially to compensate the Arab prince that was promised to be a prince and a king, and Britain did not keep his promise. That's how the Middle East was created. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous by today's standards, but only a century ago, that's how it worked. All right, if you're a superpower, might makes right. Am I right to quote it? Who can tell you what to do? Well, let's speak about the interests of the British, all right? And why did they want to stay in the area? I'm running this one through. Well, number one, the Suez Canal. We mentioned that, very important, Great Britain. We spoke about the oil pipeline. The British interest to stay in Palestine was not to help the Jews build a homeland. It was to protect British interests in the area. So from beginning, it wasn't supposed to work, and the world was fooled in a way by Great Britain. They said, listen, give us a mandate, we'll see to that. We'll make sure that this country is prepared for a Jewish state. Things did not work like that in a very short time. Within years, everything changed. Demographics changed immediately. You're bringing in tens of thousands of workers from Egypt, and from Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and Albania, and you let them stay to be the indigenous people of the land, demographics totally changed. And that became to be, of course, the problem. 1925, they built a railroad from Cairo all the way to Rafah. All right, anybody could get on the train in Cairo, deboard in Rafah, and simply walk. Walk to the brand new Haifa harbor, find work in the orchards of the beautiful Jewish communities, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. The only people that were not allowed to come in were the Jews. So the Zionist organizations recruiting money, purchasing land in Palestine, improving the land, draining swamps, and who enjoys the fruit of their labor? Foreigners, with Britain behind. Once again, I did quote that to you on Wednesday as well, because the story is always, all the Jews came to steal land from the... No, this was policy. We only purchase land that nobody lives there. We only purchase land that is available and vacant. It's important. We don't want to bring this resentment. We don't want to be in conflict with the locals. That was policy for a long time. I do need to show you some of the details, and again, information, dry numbers, but they're important. Between the two wars, we speak about the number of Jews that came will be 430,000. That's quite a lot of people. But I do need to take a sidetrack here as well. 1933, the 30th of January, elections in Germany. Adolf Hitler is not winning, he's coming out of the second biggest party, but by using all kinds of manipulations, he takes control. And from 1933, Western European Jews begin to feel that the soil is burning under their feet. And since Britain is not willing to accept too many Jews, the League of Nations intervenes. Just a minute now. We gave you a mandate. You signed a document. We expect you to carry on and promise, fulfill your promise. I have to say that the US was behind that pressure. So Great Britain, as much as it wanted to appease the Arabs, had to open the borders. And these Jews that came in came predominantly from Western Europe. And they brought money with them. Remember the Great Depression in America, the late 20s, early 30s? It was the most booming economy in the world ever, was Palestine. Very same time, because many wealthy Jews fled from Germany when it was still possible, and came to Palestine and blessed the land. So people came, land was purchased, communities are built. Most of the people that came in were non-Jews, because Britain, as we said, had an interest. But just to see the figures and the numbers, right, who came in, because these are the numbers of people that came in, let's say, legally. But another 1 million people came illegally that nobody monitored. They did not have any documents, impossible to tell who's who. Without documents, you can do basically whatever you want. We speak about militias, we speak about, yes, even back then, drug dealers. We speak about gangs infiltrating to take protection money from a new labor group that is working in the Haifa harbor, and they make some money. Well, you need to pay us to protect your property. That's not really new, all right? Protection in world history. Demographics had totally changed. When you see the figures, you understand how we are going to enter into the War of Independence. For example, this one, all right? Just in the city of Haifa, where the main harbor was built, almost 3 times more. Now, this is not just natural growth. It's not that every Arab woman was giving birth to 15 children. We speak about illegal workers that infiltrated the area to change demographics completely. And the Arabs had a point, like to say, just a minute now. A Jewish state, we make a vast majority. How dare the Jews even demand the state? Yes, you make a majority because Britain had failed to keep his promise that was given to it, the mandate over Palestine. So these things have totally changed. And that's how we enter, if you wish, the era of the independence of the Jewish state. But you do see, good things have happened. You do see the infant mortality, all that. Wasn't the British investing in building clinics or building hospitals? It was Jewish money. And once you build a clinic, it's open to everybody. Even today, Israel is giving medical attention even to people from Gaza. Today as we speak, you have a need and there's no infrastructure in Gaza, you can come even today during war. All right? You know how to approach us, we'll supply medical care. Israel is taking care about the whole region. Hospitals are open, we don't ask any questions. That's how it started, all right? So it was indeed a blessing, at least for a while. I'm going to skip the next slide with your permission. And let me show you, for example, something interesting about the Western Wall in 1928, because the Western Wall will become one of those places, since we speak about religion, keep in mind, religion. The Western Wall is the Western Wall of the Temple Mount. Temple Mount, believed to be a holy place to Islam. All right, that's where Muhammad descended. By the way, the name Jerusalem doesn't appear in the Quran. You will not find the name Jerusalem in the holy book of Islam, not even once. So how Islam is connected to Jerusalem? They're not. It's all traditions and all kind of fairy tales. Jerusalem is not mentioned in the Quran. But the Western Wall of Temple Mount became to be the holy wall for the Jews, because we cannot go up to the very top to pray, not even today. Think about it, all right? In a sovereign Jewish state, the holiest place for the Jewish people is in Muslim hands. We respect it. We are sovereign. It's not a war of religion from our perspective. We respect the Muslim right to pray in their place, so we give them permission. Jews cannot go to pray on top of Temple Mount in Israel today. So Western Wall may be second best, but it's an old tradition, and people go to the Western Wall. Look at it, 1928. Some of you have been there. Kind of muting myself in and out. Well, I do want to show you a report given by the French governor of we call it the Golan Heights today. All right, here's a report that he sends to his British counterpart in Palestine. In one summer, August of 1934, they counted, as you see, 35,000 people moving one way into Palestine, never coming back. Who are these people? People that came from every corner of the Middle East, from the Caucasus Mountains. Because, hey, Palestine is prosperous. Let's go and find jobs. And these will become the indigenous people of the land. The poor Palestinian refugees in about 10 years. They don't belong there. And then the families join them. Do you understand the dramatic change in demographics? We make some progress. I'll stop in about 5 minutes and give you some 10 minutes or so. Well, since the world is pressuring Great Britain to keep the mandate and let the Jews in, Arabs are frustrated. By the way, keep in mind, and it's not an anti-Arab comment, so to speak, whenever there is a problem, you don't negotiate. Everything is settled violently. You don't like something, usually it ends with a bullet in your head. And unfortunately, that will be a mindset that for us, we do not understand. There's a problem, let's talk. Let's negotiate, we'll find a solution. That's not the way that the Middle East is operating. If you're strong, you're going to get it. Because if you offer negotiations, that points at your weakness. Only the weak party, just the weak party, is negotiating. And if somebody approaches you with, let's talk, you are the strong one, intensify the pressure. What do you think about the impression of Iran when the whole world started talking about the nuclear deal? Only the weak party is talking. If you're strong, you don't talk. You're going to get it. And this is our mindset. Let's discuss the issue. We'll find a solution. It's not how the mindset works in the Middle East. And it's not even a negative term, a negative comment. We need to understand that. You don't negotiate. You cannot settle with anything. If you're strong enough, you go and you get it. And that was always the mindset. Now, for the local Arab mindset, if you don't like something in the British policy, there was a way. Let's create some chaos. We'll get the world's attention. Against who will be the chaos? The local Jewish neighborhood. They're vulnerable. They don't know how to protect themselves. You know, just to think about Jewish warriors. It may sound okay today. The IDF is very strong. We know how to protect ourselves. We've proven it so many times. But 60 years ago, Jewish soldiers, it was the biggest joke ever. Jews don't know how to fight. Jews know how to be bankers and lawyers, and they're weak. It takes years and centuries for a certain mindset to even accept the fact that Jews can defend themselves. The Jews can defeat the Muslims? Oh yes, sometimes quite easy. They don't get it because it's something new. To speak about Jewish soldiers was an oxymoron until about 70 years ago. And the world has a hard time to accept that. That this nation, the scapegoat of the human race, somebody that we blame for everything all the time, how dare they be so strong and so prosperous and go all the way to Iran to take out nuclear capacity? It will take a long time to the world to begin to understand that yes, Jews will no longer go like sheep to the slaughter. We had enough. But the world has a hard time to accept that. So the world will learn, because we are not going anywhere. But we need to understand this mindset, all right? Suddenly, this prosperous nation, so strong, etc. Well, you do see that things are kind of changing in Palestine. But once again, you just read those, and you understand, because the Arabs said, you know what, there's no room in Palestine. Every Jew that will come will take a job of an Arab. Number one, so what? That was the plan. The Jews will come, not the Arabs. And then you make a survey. There's room for millions in this area. If the British only agreed to, but they would not. It was more important to appease the Arabs than to keep the word of the mandate. The Arabs are very upset, and when the Arabs are upset, they go to war, and they initiate what will be called the Arab Revolution. And this time, the target will be Great Britain, not the Jews. By the way, let me challenge you, right? You go and do some homework, okay? And you try to find one document ever that an Israeli Jewish prominent leader says something like, we want to destroy the Arabs, we hate the Arabs, we want to kill the Palestinians. You won't find it. I can give you thousands of documents when Arab leaders are saying, our objective is to destroy the Jews. All right? You give me one example that a Jewish community, a Jewish militia raided an Arab community. Just one. You won't find it. I can give you hundreds of examples that upset Arabs in a village decided to raid into the nearest Jewish community. It's not propaganda. Here's your challenge. Go and check. You give me one speech of one prominent Israeli Jewish leader which is anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, that speaks about the death, destruction. You won't find it. It's not there. You'll find the opposite in many, many places. All right? And they don't hide their intention. It's not a secret agenda. The Arab world will never accept, never ever, the existence of a Jewish state in the very heart of Muslim territory. The Jews are dhimmis. The Jews are the sons of the apes and the sons of the pigs. And the Jews should be despised and disgraced. Suddenly the Jews have a country in the very heart of Arab territory. They cannot accept it. If they do, something is wrong in Islam. All right? And they cannot admit to that, as you understand. So the Arabs are getting together and they go to attack the British and Great Britain, at least at first, a little confused, not really knowing what to do. And I would like to bring session 1 to conclusion with your permission, and we'll speak about that because this event is going to be crucial, all right, to understand the weakness of the Arabs in Palestine in 10 years when the War of Independence will start. This was a big mistake. Great Britain was patient for a while. When they understood that this is going to be dangerous, they simply crushed them totally, including exiling the leadership. In 10 years' time, when Israel will proclaim a state, the Arabs in Palestine did not have that much to protect themselves with because of the way the British crushed the revolt of 1936 to 1939. Thank you for staying with me. I know it's a lot to cover, but I'm just beginning. We have 3 more sessions, and I hope that you find it interesting. Let's be back in 10 minutes, all right? We can continue. Thank you.